What's up, guys? 5-Star Paintball Tech here. We're back in the boiler room, and today we're going to be rebuilding a Generation 3 Intimidator. This one's an alias. We're going to be using the Generation 3 Intimidator rebuild kit available on 5starpbtech.com. Click the link in the description to order yours today. This kit is super simple to use. It comes in 5 separate bags. Each different bag, which is numbered, will pertain to a different part of the marker. That way you can keep things nice and organized, and you can skip to different parts of this video to rebuild a specific part of the gun. To give a quick overview of the kit, again, it comes in 5 labeled bags, labeled 1 through 5. Bag number 1 is going to be for rebuilding the O-rings on the stock bolt. Again, these kits were made for rebuilding the marker in its stock form. So it comes with 4 015 O-rings. Bag number 2 is going to be for rebuilding your low pressure regulator. Bag number 3 is for your high pressure regulator. Bag number 4 is for replacing the O-rings on your front block. And lastly, bag number 5 is for the ram sleeve. That also includes the poppet and the ram. So once you have all these O-rings replaced, the marker is going to be brand new. We're going to go through how to disassemble the marker, give it a really nice cleaning the same way that I do to customer markers, and then of course replacing the O-rings to make this thing shoot like new. In addition to this rebuild kit, there's 2 other add-ons that you can buy. One of them is the detents, and these are a special house blend. They're made of a slightly stiffer material than the stock ones. As long as you keep them clean and make sure that the marker is stored in the with the bolt in the rear position, these detents will last forever. And then the last add-on that you can get is going to be a brand new solenoid. These are manufactured very recently. I get them straight from Koganai through a distributor, and these are what you need to keep your marker running for another 15 years plus. So with that said, we'll go into the next section of the video, which is all the tools that you'll need to rebuild the marker. All right, guys, quick overview of the tools that we're going to need to rebuild the Generation 3 Intimidator. First of which, of course, Allen keys. This is what you're going to use to unscrew all the screws in the marker. Recommend getting a full kit. I love the Bondus ones. These are standard, not metric, so just keep that in mind. The next piece that we'll need is going to be a small screwdriver. They make great kits on Amazon. This is the Gato brand. They come in a nice kit that has a bunch of different sizes for screwdrivers, Torx bits, and a few other things. They work really well for this purpose. You're going to need a Phillips head attachment, and then you're also going to need a flathead to get into the Schrader valve for the LPR. I like to use a O-ring pick as well. And then for getting into barbs and then even the Schrader valve on the high pressure regulator, just a nut driver, and we'll only be using the 3/8 attachment for the high pressure regulator Schrader valve, and then the 3/16 for the barbs. In addition to that, for getting the low pressure regulator off, I use a really nice 3D printed tool for just kind of getting in there and unscrewing it. Or you can use a adjustable wrench. And then lastly, to fish the piston out of there, I like to use a pair of needle nose pliers. The last piece, this is also for sale on 5starpbtech.com. Really high quality liquid filled gauge attached to a on-off setup with a bleed purge valve. This is what we'll be using to measure the pressure of the high pressure regulator. So you could grab one of these on 5-Star PB Tech. They work awesome, and they're just really high quality pieces that just allow you to measure your pressure very accurately. So with that said, these are all the tools that you'll need to work on the marker. We're going to break the rest of the video down into each section by the numbered bag of the part that corresponds to the part of the marker that we'll be rebuilding. So stay tuned. All right, so we're going to start with bag number 1 here. This corresponds to rebuilding the bolt. Again, this is only going to be for the stock bolt. Pretty much all bolts that have O-rings, this will be compatible with. We give you 4 015 O-rings, which again will cover all of the O-rings on the stock bolts. Some bolts use less, like the Shock Tech. So in any case, to get to the bolt, we're just going to pull the bolt pin up. This will slide right out. I did forget one tool that I'm going to use, which is actually not so much of a tool, but more of a cleaning thing. We're going to use a microfiber cloth as the means to clean all of the different pieces of this marker. So the first thing that we're going to do is just get the O-rings off of this. I just like to give them a little pinch, and they just slide right off. And we're going to put those in the garbage. You won't be needing those anymore. So once you got all 4 of those off, we're just going to use the microfiber cloth to get in all the grooves here. And this one had some paint, especially at the tip. So we're just going to clean all that out. I just like to get a little bit of the microfiber, kind of pinch it and get it into the groove. Just kind of let the O-ring, places where the O-rings go, just kind of let it glide through there. And then you'll also want to just kind of do the same thing, but in the detent grooves. And then this one has a little bit of paint on the inside. So we're just going to use a Q-tip to get in there and clean all that out. You guys are really seeing how the sausage is made. I do this on like every gun that I work on. Give it a really nice cleaning so that it can work the best that it can work. All right, once you have that cleaned up, we're going to open up baggie number 1. And this is really easy. We're just going to take the O-rings out of here. Get those little Q-tip fibers out of there. The O-rings just slide right into the grooves. Nice and easy. So you could just kind of roll them down, and they'll click right into place. All right, guys, and that's your bolt. You probably just want to give the rest of it a cleaning. Sometimes you might have some black residue in there from just dirt, oil, grease. I recommend either running the bolt dry, or if you have Planet Eclipse gun oil, just a drop on each of the O-rings and just kind of spread it around, and you'll be in really good shape. I would not recommend using grease. So just keep that in mind. All right, guys, so we got part 2. This is where we're going to rebuild the low pressure regulator using bag number 2. Bolts up top here, we're just going to set that off to the side. Few new tools that we're going to need in order to rebuild the low pressure regulator. I like to use Gorilla Grip tape actually around the low pressure regulator, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. That's basically going to protect the flats on the low pressure regulator just from getting scratched. This one has a little bit of wear, but we're going to do it anyway because we respect our customers' markers. The adjustable wrench will be used to just take the low pressure regulator off, just unscrews. We're going to be utilizing needle nose pliers, which I have right here, to grab the piston once we get to that part. And then last but not least, we're going to be using a flathead screwdriver to get the Schrader nut out of the marker so that we could take the entire Schrader valve out and rebuild that. And then, sorry, last but not least, and I didn't mention this in the beginning of the video, for all O-rings, with the exception of the bolt O-rings, we're going to be using Dow 55 grease, which again, you could get on 5starpbtech.com. And this is the type of grease that you're going to want for the regs, and again, all O-rings in the marker, with the exception of the bolt. You're going to want to run those dry or use some Planet Eclipse gun oil. So without further ado, let's get the low pressure regulator off. Again, I mentioned that I like using Gorilla Grip tape. You don't have to use Gorilla Grip brand. I just like it because it doesn't leave residue on whatever you put it on. You can use duct tape, works really well. And again, you're just going to wrap it around the base so that the flats are covered. And then that way you don't scratch anything up, make any idiot marks. So once we have that on there, you just want to make sure that you press it down so that you can actually see where the flats are. Looks like we got one right there. Tighten that bad boy up. And then this just turns counterclockwise, really easy. And usually once you get it going a little bit and feels easy, you can get that wrench off of there to prevent any potential damage, and just unscrews just like that. So we're going to set the tape off to the side. Now, the low pressure regulator is going to be split up into a few parts. You have the low pressure regulator body, which is this bottom part, and then you have the cap. And the two just kind of unscrew from each other. You can typically always unscrew it by hand. You're just going to hold it up ways like that, because otherwise, actually, we could do it right now. The mainspring and the adjuster plate are going to come out. So you could just put those off to the side. We'll go through the order of how to reassemble it. You have your adjuster screw right here. This I just recommend using your Allen key kit. It's the 316 that you'll want to just unscrew the screw until you could see some threads. That'll just make sure that it's set to 0 psi, so that when we eventually gas this up to set the pressure, it's at no pressure basically. So we now have the low pressure regulator body. What we're going to do from here is we're going to take the piston out using the needle nose pliers, which will just pull it out. We're going to use the microfiber cloth just to clean the piston. And this is where we'll get some O-rings out of the bag. And we're going to rebuild two parts here, starting with the low pressure regulator body. Now, there's two large O-rings in here. You're going to start with the two largest ones. There's the skinny one right here. This is a 020 Buna 70 durometer O-ring. And then we have a 114 70 durometer O-ring. We're going to start by taking the low pressure regulator body. You're just going to pinch the O-rings, starting with the 020. It's the one closest to the base right here. Just put that off to the side, and then you just want to inspect it and make sure that it's clean. This one's in good shape. It's not gunked with grease or anything. Otherwise, I would just normally give it a wipe off. Then you just replace the O-ring. Same deal with the one at the base. This is your 114 O-ring, which is the thicker one. And again, just usually pinching the O-ring and rolling it will get it off the marker. And you're just going to roll this bad boy back on. And now the regulator body's rebuilt. So that's part one. Part two then is going to be the piston. Again, you're just going to want to give that a little wipe with the microfiber cloth and just roll the O-rings off. Once you have it off, usually you'll notice some old grease in the grooves here. So I just like to, kind of like we do with all the other parts, just wipe it down with microfiber cloth. And now it's squeaky clean. And we're going to go down a size in O-ring. You'll notice there's 3 different sizes left. So we're going to take the 2 largest ones that are left. These are 011 O-rings. Get out of there. Okay. So you have those out. Just get those onto the piston. And your piston's rebuilt. Last part here is going to be the Schrader valve. So this is where we're going to use the small flathead screwdriver. And what you'll notice is that there's a spot in here for a flathead screwdriver to kind of fit in. It's a little bit wider, but using the small one, you could still get in there. And you're just going to unscrew that. Once that's done, you're just going to let it all kind of pour out. There's 3 parts to the Schrader valve. There's the Schrader valve pin, there's the Schrader valve seal, and then there's the Schrader valve nut. And I can already see there's some damage done to the nut O-ring, which can cause an over-pressurizing issue. And then what you can also see with the original Schrader valve seal, we'll get a little bit closer there. You can see how it's kind of opaque in color. This means that it's starting to degrade. Once it degrades and it starts to crumble, that's when you start getting over-pressurizing issues as well. I have a separate video that you can watch that shows all the root causes of a over-pressurized regulator set. You could troubleshoot, but since we're rebuilding this, we're going to be in good shape. So we're going to put all this off to the side. I'm just going to throw out the Schrader valve seal. And what we're going to do here is just run a microfiber cloth on the inside of the low pressure regulator. Give that bore a nice cleaning. Put that off to the side. We're going to go in the bag here. There's 2 O-rings left. We're going to start with the smaller one. And we're going to use this in place of the urethane seal. This is a regular O-ring. It's a harder O-ring that I use. It's a 90 durometer, and it's made out of a chemical resistant material, which means that if grease is going to find its way onto this part, it's not going to get soft. It's not going to degrade over time like the stock seals would. So it'll add some reliability to this, and it works really well as a replacement. And then last thing that we're going to do is we're just going to take the O-ring off of the Schrader nut. Just use an O-ring pick to get that off. And that's a 010 O-ring. I'm just going to roll the new one on. Slides right over the pin. So you have your pin, you have the Schrader valve seal, and then you have the nut. And this piece is rebuilt. You're just going to drop it back in spring first, back into the low pressure regulator body, and then use the screwdriver to just screw that bad boy back in. You just want to do it hand tight. We're going to use your Dow 55 grease on the piston O-rings, and you just want to get a nice light coat on there. I'm just going to actually get that off my fingers. So, and I'll get a close-up on this. This is really what it should look like in the amount of grease that you want to use. So just enough to coat it and fill that middle groove. And then once you got that lubed up, just put it back inside. What we want to do is do the skinny side facing upwards, because the mainspring is going to sit on that. So mainspring will go on top, and then the adjuster plate is going to go on top of the spring. You should be able to press it all down and it's nice and springy. And the last thing that we're going to do is just screw the low pressure regulator cap back on. This low pressure reg is ready to rock. Last thing I would just do is get into the bore of the front block. Give that a good clean wipe up. This screws right back in there. And your low pressure regulator is rebuilt. All right, so we're on part 3 right now. We're going to rebuild the high pressure regulator using the bag number 3. There's 2 different ways that I'm going to go about doing this in terms of the disassembly. I'm going to do the long way first. You can see here that we can easily just disconnect the macroline fitting and unscrew this high pressure reg. Not everybody has the luxury of having the macroline fitting directly behind the or in front of the trigger frame. So what we're going to do here is just disassemble the marker a little bit, just to make sure that it can be accessible. So we're going to take I think it's what size is that? 5/64 Allen key, and just take off the 2 grip screws. Going to have to do this anyway to get to the rest of the marker. I'm going to put that aside, and then we're going to take a 3/32 Allen key from the kit, And just undo these 4 frame screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once those are off, you just want to apply a little bit of pressure down while you pull the rest of it up, and that way you don't lose your screws. You're going to see a whole bunch of frame guts inside. And then what we're going to do here is we're just going to take off the trigger guard. And for those who don't have the luxury of a macro line setup like this, if we take that off, again, it was just the 2 frame screws right there. It just comes right off after. Now we can access the torpedo reg. Now what you'll notice is I'm actually going to reuse this part of the video across all of the different generations, minus the generation 5, because they use a different style high pressure reg. They don't use the torpedo, but all the other ones do. So no matter what generation 1 through 4, they all disassemble the same way, and they all have the same exact parts inside of them. So that said, I'm going to grab baggie number 3, and the first thing that we're going to do to disassemble is just unscrew the 2 halves apart from each other. And we're going to separate this part into 2 different halves, I guess. So the top half, which is what contains this brass nut and the Schrader valve, is going to be the first part that we do surgery on. So in order to get that out, we're either going to use the 3/8 nut driver just to grab it directly. Many of you might not have that, so you can also use, just like we did in the low pressure regulator, a flathead screwdriver. So I'm just going to do it the easy way, and we're just going to use the nut driver to unscrew that. Again, it breaks down and reassembles the same exact way that the stock one does. This is actually a nice Schrader valve. This one comes with this one has a stainless Schrader pin, which is good for just reliability and longevity of it. It's a big reason why I decided to make the Schrader pins in my supercharger kits out of stainless. So actually, you'll notice first that this was the original Schrader valve seal. That one's still in pretty good shape. It's still translucent. I find that they just deteriorate over time. I included and it's the smallest O-ring in here. Same exact Schrader seal as what we put inside of the LPR. Again, it's a 90 durometer, and what it does is it's made out of a chemical resistant material, so it won't break down over time. That should probably last the life of the marker. And then I also included an extra 010 O-ring in here, or in the baggie rather, that we're going to replace this one with. So let's grab that off with a O-ring pick. And again, you have a 010 inside of baggie number 3 as a direct replacement. Just roll that over. And that's pretty much ready to rock. So the order of operations for reassembling this is the pin first. The O-ring goes on top of the pin, and then the nut goes above the O-ring. So it looks exactly like that. We're also going to just take the top piece and with the microfiber cloth, just give it a nice cleaning on the inside. You'll notice cleaning's a big part of pretty much every step of this, and it just makes sure that you don't have any dirt or gross stuff on the inside that can just cause unnecessary wear. I'm going to use the nut driver to get that screwed back in. And then half is good to go. You only need to do hand tight on the Schrader valve. You just want to also kind of depress a little bit so that you can feel resistance and you can feel the pin going back in. We're going to set that off to the side. Part 2 is on the lower half. So again, all torpedo regulators disassemble the same way. There's a ton of different variations of what the bottom and the top piece looks like. But first things first, just like to clean the threads there. I did include an additional O-ring for this guy. It's a 17, I believe. And you're just going to pop that guy back in. We're going to use our needle nose pliers to just grab the piston. You literally just yank it out. It's going to look like this. This is another piece where we're going to replace the O-ring on it. One thing I'll note too, for the Schrader valve, I never apply any lubricant. There's really no need to. The only part that's going to require lubricant out of all this is going to be the piston. So we're just going to pinch the O-ring on there, and you'll see it's the fat one that I included a replacement for. And just another cleaning bit. I always just like to take the microfiber cloth and just run it through the O-ring groove right here. There's usually always some leftover grease. And again, we're going to take the fatter O-ring and just roll that bad boy on top. So that's all good. Now for the rest of the bottom, there's two parts inside of it, actually technically three. You have the adjuster screw right there. You also have a spring in the adjuster plate. So to get the spring in the adjuster plate out, I'm just going to tap it. It'll fall right out. And I just like to give them a nice cleaning on the microfiber cloth, and you'll even see some gunk came off of it. Just a little pro tip for the reassembly. You'll notice that there's kind of like a flat part on this and then a domed part. I always like to sit the spring on the flat part. That way the screw makes contact on the dome part. It just fits nicer. Dropped my what's it called, microfiber cloth. And then what we're also going to do is just run the microfiber cloth through the inner bore of the high pressure rag, just like that. It's nice and clean. And then using a 3/16 Allen key, we have the adjuster screw right here. I just like to unscrew it so that the threads are showing. And that just ensures that it's set to 0 psi. First part in is going to be the adjuster plate. That's what makes contact with the screw, which then makes contact with the spring. And then same deal as all the other parts that we've lubricated so far. Going to use some Dow 55. Again, for the regulator O-rings, for anything ram sleeve related, pretty much every single part in the gun minus the bolt. Going to recommend some Dow 55. And I'll get a close-up so you can kind of see how much I typically use. So just enough to coat the O-ring and fill in the groove between the O-ring and the metal. So once we got it there, it's important to note too that there is a right way and a wrong way to insert the piston. So the small end is going to be facing up, fat part facing down. And then just wipe off the excess grease right there, just because it's not really needed. And from there, screw it all back together. Reminder that this is going to be set to about 0 psi. Make sure that your macro fitting is nice and tight. So this is now rebuilt. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to use my new pressure tester to reset the high pressure regulator. So it's important to note for these torpedoes, and actually for any Generation 3 Intimidator, a good starting point to set the high pressure reg at is going to be at about 200 psi. So to do that, you're going to screw the high pressure reg into the pressure tester. This will also be a nice little tutorial on how to use the pressure tester. Let's get a new tank. Use my big boy 90. I'm just going to screw that in. And then what we're going to do is use the 3/16 Allen key to just adjust the pressure here. As you screw it in, screwing it in clockwise will increase the pressure, as you can see here. So I just like to set it to about 200 psi as the starting point. And then if you're using one of my pressure testers, I included a nice little bleed valve right here. So once you have it set to 200, just give it a nice little bleed and it'll reset. So you could see there's usually, it's not perfect when you set the pressure on virtually any bob long rig. You always want to give it like a clearing shot or two. And in this case, what's it called? Just a little bleed. And you want to do that until you're right at the sweet spot. So now we're at exactly 200. It's a nifty little gauge. For this one specifically, we're going to want to just unscrew the tank from here. And then it kind of self-bleeds. With a marker with a on-off here, normally you'll just unscrew the on-off, bleed it out, and the rest will bleed itself. So yeah, now the torpedo reg is reset. We'll go on to the next part of the disassembly and rebuild the marker. All right, guys, this next part is going to probably not be so much rebuild, but more so disassembly. We're going to get pretty much all the guts outside of the trigger frame. That way we could take the trigger frame off. We're going to start by taking the board out. There's a few things underneath it, so we'll just take things one step at a time. First thing that you're going to need is we're going to take our Phillips head screwdriver. And there's going to be two screws, one of which we're going to take out with the Phillips head. It's usually a silver screw. I'm doing a customer a favor and I'm going to throw a black one in because he didn't have it. But there's two screws that hold the board in, one of which is right here, which is what we're going to use the Phillips head on. And then there's a second screw right here, which requires a 116, which 116 Allen key. So I'll just put that off to the side. So first things first, we're just going to unscrew the board screw right there. Pull that off to the side. And then 116 Allen key goes in here. That unscrews. You might have the board pop directly up. From here, the first part that I recommend doing, there's your eye wires right here. Just give it a nice little pull. Pull it right from the base. That'll put the least amount of strain on the wiring. And then if we just turn the board off to the side a little bit, you could see the membrane pad, which will come out like that. And then we're going to want to maneuver these very delicately because depending on how old your marker is, it might have just like loose wiring that can pull out, which is really frustrating to deal with because then you need new wiring. We're looking for the solenoid cable, which starts with the black and green wires on the main harness and then leads to your solenoid. So again, just grab those at the base. And now the board is out. I'm just going to put that off to the side. You have your solenoid right here. And then the eye wiring, which is still in the marker. You can actually take off the frame at this point. So what we're going to do is take a 1/8 Allen key. And then you have two frame screws, one here, and then run one right there. Just unscrew those. I like the Bondus Allen keys because they have the ball head right there. Allows you to get it in at different angles. Once you have the two screws out, it's really important that you just remember to take off the front hose, which will come right out. And then from there, frame is all good. Everything's disconnected. I'm just going to put that off to the side. Next thing you're going to want to do is just pull the hose off of the two barbs right there and there. And I'll be honest, in a lot of cases, I use brute force to just yank it off. If it's really on there, I might recommend using a needle nose plier to just kind of yank them off and get a little bit more leverage with it. But that said, this is disconnected. We're going to put that off to the side. And then the last thing we're going to do is take the 564 Allen key to get the eye covers off. if you purchase a set of detents from me, like this customer has MacDev ones in here. I find that the MacDev's a little bit short versus stock, so I prefer mine. But yeah, this is going to be a good time to replace your detents. And I think in either case, once we have these out, we're just going to want to give them a little cleaning. Keep the paint and grease off of it, because you could even feel they're starting to get a little bit soft. Which again is why I like mine. As long as you keep them clean, they will last you for pretty much the life of the gun. And also keep the bolt in the rear position while it's in storage. One of the main reasons why I see detents go bad, actually, is because the owners let the bolt sit in the forward position while the marker's in storage. And when that happens, the bolt basically bends them, and they don't come back. So that said, got the eye covers off. What we're going to do here is just, usually there's one easy end to kind of pull out, and this is going to be by hand. And if there is no easy side, like what we're seeing right now, this thing's not really cooperating with me. Easy way to do it is to take the Allen key with the short end of the L, put it right down the breech, and then you're going to find like a leverage spot in here where you could just kind of poke it through the eye hole. And you'll see here that that'll usually 100% of the time knock one of the eyes out. And then use the long side down the breech to the other side. Now our eyes are out, and we're just going to want to give this a quick clean. Do the other side. Like brushing your teeth. And now we're basically down to the gun itself. We're going to now use bag number 4 to rebuild the front block. And to get to that, let's see what size that was. It's a 5/32, I believe, Allen key to get the front block screw off. This front block is an evil front block, which is going to be a little bit different to rebuild. It only has one O-ring, whereas if you're using the stock 2K5 front block, you'll notice that it has 2, which I included 2 O-rings for. We're first just going to clean this. And then what we're going to do is just pop the O-ring off. Again, this one only has one O-ring. Stock one will have 2. It's a little bit longer. And it's a 0.15 70 durometer O-ring in bag 4. So this customer's only going to need one of them. Just throw the new O-ring on there. Set that off to the side. And we're basically down to the last parts of the gun. What I'd recommend doing from here is use the nut driver. This one's a 3/16 nut driver. I'm going to just swap heads right there. And then just unscrew them. If you don't have access to a nut driver, probably recommend using your needle nose pliers to just grab the flats from above. I'll do that on the second one so I can show you what you mean. You're basically going to use needle nose pliers to grab it at the flats, and just make sure you have a tight grip on it. Don't want to use it on this one. It looks like there might be some thread adhesive on it. Better to use the nut driver. The reason why this one has adhesive on it, looks like, is because he doesn't have washers on it. So most barbs will have washers at the base of them just to keep everything sealed up. So we now have the marker at the basically down to the body and the ram sleeve. The first part that we can kind of take off from the get-go is going to be the spring. It's accessible through there. This one actually has a 2K2 ram sleeve in it, not a Gen 3. I usually always use needle nose pliers to grab the poppet out of the front. And this one also has a lightened spring, which just kind of pops on there. So this is going to start to go into O-ring bag 5. And once I have the poppet out, I'm just going to give the stem of it a nice cleaning. Same deal with the cup seal. And this is going to be a good opportunity to use your handy dandy O-ring pick to get this O-ring off. All right, and then once that O-ring's off, I just like to get the microfiber in that O-ring groove, and you'll even see there's some dirt there. I'm going to take the spring off for a second. As we go into bag number 5, you'll notice that there's a small O-ring and then there's a really small O-ring. So the smallest O-ring is the one that goes around the poppet stem right here. So my little trick for getting that O-ring on, you're just going to sit the poppet down on its cup seal head, and you're just going to want to get the O-ring positioned above the head and just kind of stretch it over the tip of the stem and then push it down. So that's rebuilt now. Put the spring back on and push that off to the side. Next up is going to be the ram sleeve retention screw, which we're going to need a 3/16 Allen key to access and get that out of there. So what I'm noticing right now is that the owner has Teflon tape around this screw. Not sure if that ever worked out for him. We're going to clean that off. If this has Teflon tape on it, my gut tells me is that he had a leak coming from the ram sleeve, which was due to the rear ram sleeve O-ring getting cut on its way in. And to be honest, that's probably the hardest part of rebuilding the marker. Now, one thing that I also recommend is if you have a 3/16 nut driver, it actually fits pretty perfectly inside of the where the poppet sits in. So I actually use that to push the ram sleeve out. Ooh. Gunky. Give that a nice clean on the exterior. That comes right out. So we have the ram sleeve right here. Going back into bag number 5, first thing that we're going to do is just pop the 2 ram sleeve O-rings off of this. And again, for pretty much every O-ring that we're taking off, just want to get in there with the microfiber cloth and get all the grease out. We'll get the other one too. And actually, you could see I called it right there. It's got a, see if the camera can get it. It's got a little chip in the O-ring right there. And right there. So that was likely the cause of his ram sleeve leak. Let's just get that all cleaned up. Just going to put the body up here for right now. So the 2 O-rings that I took off are 112 70 durometer O-rings. To replace those, they are both inside of the kit. So actually, I misspoke before, and it was probably a bit early to assume. This ram sleeve is actually a Generation 3, but it had a Generation 2 poppet in it, as you can see here. So probably going to have to contact the customer and tell him that if he wants this thing up and running fully, he's going to need a Generation 3 poppet. But in any case, ram sleeve is now rebuilt. Next up is going to be the, we're going to take off the ram cap. One of the things that I get a lot of markers in, people just throw a lot of lubricant or Dow 55 or whatever they're using onto the RAM itself, which really isn't needed. I'm going to show you guys exactly how I do it. Definitely give the RAM cap a nice thorough cleaning. Set that off to the side. If you just kind of tap that out, RAM comes out shortly after. And again, we're just going to want to give that a nice cleaning as well. I also like to give it a nice cleaning, get in there with the microfiber cloth where the RAM or the bolt pin sits. And then just pinch the O-rings that are on here to get them off. Just going to throw those out. One thing that's always good to check while you have the O-rings off of the RAM itself is just to make sure that the tip right here isn't bent. So this one looks like it's in good shape. It actually happens a lot more than you think. This is also gonna go in the garbage. And again, just get in there with the yeah, a lot of the time I see the tips get bent when the seals inside of the low pressure regulator actually disintegrate, and now you have full high pressure reg pressure going through your low pressure reg, which usually is indicated by a leaky solenoid, and as a result, you're basically hitting the you're smacking the poppet stem right there with about, I don't know, call it 200 psi, and ends up bending the tip right there. But anyways, back to bag 5. There's 2 O-rings left. There's a 011, which is the one that goes on the rear, and then a 006 O-ring, which goes in the front. So RAM is rebuilt. We're going to set that off to the side. There's this is part of the secret sauce. I'm going to get a thinner microfiber cloth. Part of the secret sauce in getting these guns shooting so good is basically completely cleaning the RAM sleeve. So what I'm doing right now is I'm basically like twisting the microfiber cloth into the RAM sleeve to really clean that bore out. What I'd like to do too is just use my O-ring pick to pull it in. Obviously, we're not going to put it in so deep that we're scratching the inside. But once it's all the way in there, we're going to get all that gunk and all that old lube out. So what I recommend here is microfiber cloth to get inside the inner bore through the back. Look at all that gross gunk. I really needed it. I'm going to recommend also some Q-tips. And what I'd like to do too, usually you get some gunk that accumulates right around that silver ring where it looks like the RAM goes inside of. And you just kind of roll the Q-tip around in front of it. Look, a lot of crap that came off of there. And then make sure to clean too the opening where the bolt pin kind of moves back and forth. That's a gunky RAM sleeve. And then through the front too. Sometimes I like to take too, and you could even see how gross the front of it is. I'm going to take 2 Q-tips, and you get the first one in and let the second one kind of chase it in there. Oop. And all you're going to do is just kind of glide them both in at the same time. That way you can really get in there and clean this thing out. And then again, to get them out, it's easiest if you let one stay down. Jeez. Yeah, this thing needed a cleaning bad. Look at that. Disgusting. So yeah, this thing's ready to rock. Just give it a nice blow through the through this piece here to blow out any Q-tip cotton that's left over. And this thing's good to go from the RAM sleeve. We're going to, again, this is part of the secret sauce, so just want to run microfiber cloth through both bores of the body, because remember the ram sleeve and the bolt are going to make contact with both, so you just want those nice and clean also. A lot of people ask me how often they should be breaking the marker down. I probably recommend breaking it down this far, maybe like once every, call it 20 cases. Definitely recommend wiping the bolt completely clean after every time you use it. Add some oil to the O-rings if you like. And then I would say break it down this far, maybe like every 20 to 30 cases. So yeah, you can see, I just like to get every real crevice. And from here, I just like to use the O-ring pick to pull the microfiber cloth out the front. Ba-boom. Beautiful. Mirror finish. So put that off to the side. One thing to note, you can usually see it here. See where the metal is a different color on the bottom tube? That's indicative that the body was at one point punctured. So one of the things that we might just want to keep an eye out for. Actually, that does look to be original. So it might not have been punctured, but it's the start of the owner at one point, just having the front frame screw in a bit far. We just want to kind of test the waters by letting the ram sleeve kind of slide down the through the front. This is usually the way that I prefer to insert the ram sleeve back in. You can see that it really needs some resistance there, and it's because the screw hole is a bit raised, right where you see it kind of change colors right there. So I'm actually going to recommend going through the back on this one, and it's really important that we go slow, because one of the things that's possible is cutting the ram sleeve O-ring. You can even see, I think we already did it. This is going to be a good lesson for you guys. So I'm just going to grab 2 more. I'll just throw some new O-rings on the ram sleeve. So again, nice and slow. And it even helps too if you kind of twist as you go forward. All right. And then my recommendation, once you get it past basically that hole and that hole, is you get it on its side so that you can no longer see where the set screw sits inside of it. So it's almost going to look sideways. And then once you get it there, just kind of assist it in. And then what I like to do with the nut driver is just get it back in there to the point where you can kind of twist it back. Just push it all the way back in. And what's kind of nice about this whole setup is once we have set screw in there, it'll all pretty much reset itself. Get that back out. So we now have the ram sleeve inside of the marker. There's 2 parts that also need to go back in with it. So we have the poppet, which I'm going to show you right now. Just needs a little bit of lube to coat the O-ring. So it looks like this. and that just pops back in the front. Once the poppet's in there, the RAM is going to be the next. So again, the RAM doesn't need a lot of lube. Just want enough to coat the O-ring. So again, just enough to coat the O-ring. You don't need to do it around all of the metal. I see that a lot, and all it does is attract dirt. So again, just enough to coat the O-ring. And from there, pop that back in. Gonna pop the RAM sleeve back in there, or the RAM cap. Also good timing to just pop the front block back on there and secure it down with the set screw that we put off to the side. There we go. I'll just sit down, and again, all these screws we're just doing hand tight. Last pieces here are going to be the barbs. And again, just hand tight on these. The barbs are actually really easy to snap if you go too tight. Actually, you know what? We're going to put some washers on these just to make sure that they seal up correctly. Because the most embarrassing thing would be starting this thing up and we got a leak. So that's one. Again, these are what your washers look like. They're really, literally, they almost look like O-rings, but they're flat and hard. And they just sit at the bottom, or at the base where the threads are. And again, they're just there to seal this thing up. So once you have them kind of threaded in by hand, just chase them the rest of the way with the nut driver. And then same deal with the other one. Nice and hand tight. Okay, so this is the first half of the marker. We're going to go through the disassembly and the rest in another cut. All right, first half of, or the top half of the markers, pretty much all rebuilt, or actually is all rebuilt. We're going to then start by taking your solenoid and reconnecting the hosing to the front. This was always really poorly illustrated in the manual. Everybody always gets the hoses mixed up from the front and the back. So there's two of them that you could see on the solenoid. We'll call them the top and the bottom. The top one is going to go to the front barb, and then the bottom one's going to go to the rear. So solenoid is now connected. We're now going to throw the eyes back into the marker. And actually, this is a good opportunity to just give the eye holes a nice quick clean. Make sure that those are no longer full of paint. And then also do the same with the D10 holes. Just like to kind of glide it back and forth in there. You can see some gunk. Ooh, this thing was dirty. There we go. Cool. Eyes go in the same way that they came out. The way that I like to do it is just you want to find the position where they kind of make like an L shape, like what we're seeing here. And then that would indicate that the right eye is going into the right hole. You just want to get them into the holes and then take the eye covers, throw those bad boys back in. Do the same on the other side. Okay, and then a lot of people put what are called jock straps into their markers. To be honest with you, I never saw the need for them. What I'm showing you right now is kind of the formation that I make with the hoses, so that you really don't need one. Basically what we're doing is we're routing the eye wire through the little loop above the front ram barb. And in doing so, it's going to allow us to pretty easily access the eye wires without the hoses getting in the way of the trigger movement. So now that we have that back in, we're just going to grab the trigger frame again. And hoses here were cut a bit long, so I'm going to route those carefully. The main thing that you want to do is just ensure that the solenoid kind of clicks into place like that. And there we go. And then from there, just going to get those trigger frame screws so that you don't have to do all this work holding everything. And then again, with this front one, it's just really important that you screw it in hand tight. There's no need to go nuts trying to like really get that in there. You can see it's on securely. And what we're going to do with the O-ring pick here is just get the eye wiring pulled through that loop that I mentioned before. And this is also a good time to throw the high pressure reg back on. We're going to get that routed right behind there, or in front of the trigger guard rather. And again, if you have a setup where there's just like not enough space to get this back on with the trigger guard on, you're just going to take the trigger guard off using the 3/32 Allen key on those two screws. It'll come right off. You throw the regulator on, screw it on all the way to where it was before, and then throw the trigger guard back on after that. The other thing you could do if you don't want to even touch this is once we, before we put the trigger frame on at all, we would install the high pressure reg first and then install the trigger guard after. That way it doesn't have to make contact. So now that we're here, we're going to do some reassembly on the board. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is just take the eye wire and plug that in. Again, we're just going to pull it up slightly so that we could get to the wiring. Plug that in. This one's got a pretty pesky solenoid wire. Solenoid wire is going to go next. So again, everything just kind of clicks right in. And then what you'll notice too is that it kind of makes like a Y shape on the solenoid wiring. Anytime you have the Y cut out, you're going to want to make sure that you see the silver kind of wiring embedded in the white plastic facing the same way. So now we have that in place. You want to just find the right way to shimmy the battery wire in too. And that way everything kind of fits in there. The last thing that we're going to want to do is set the board screws. So I just like to kind of hold the board down with one hand. Remember there's two screws, so the skinny one goes first with the Phillips head screwdriver. Just screw that bad boy in. And then the second one uses the 1/16 Allen key. And if you ever notice that the board isn't sitting completely flat, it's usually a good sign that the solenoid underneath it isn't in the right position. So you just want to kind of shimmy that around until you feel the click, and then set the board back down and make sure that the trigger can make contact with the micro switch. There we go. Going to take the screw and put that down. Thank God I have a tripod and I don't have to hold the camera up with one hand. There we go. There we go. We're back in the game there. Just route that. Battery goes in last. And now we're ready to close up the clamshell. What do I do with that Allen key? It's the 3/32 that we want. Oh, wasn't taken out. Just use the 3/32 to close that down. Again, all the screws just go in hand tight. Last screws are going to use the, I think it's a 5/64. There we go. And last but not least, getting that bolt back in there. So pop the bolt pin. This is just going to go in through the rear. And then you just want, the important piece here is to make sure that the bolt clicks into the ram. Man, for as many of these as I work on, I still don't get this on the first try. There we go. And then the last thing we're going to do is set the ram position. So if you have an adjustable ram cap, it'll be adjustable through the back right here via set screw. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set it to the right point and show you what it should look like down the breech. And really what it is just want to have a sliver of white kind of showing down the breech, and that'll make sure that the ball ends up sitting in the same place. If you can see black O-ring from the bolt, that's usually a good sign that you've gone too far. So I think where we have it right now, where it's just like slightly protruding into the breech, should be really good position. Get the right light in there. You could see that. So this thing's ready for testing now. What we're going to do in the next cut is we're going to take this gauge off and actually put one of my tuning gauges on that looks like this. The reason why I'm not a huge fan of these really small gauges is it's hard to get accurate pressure readings with them, even though they do read to the PSI that you need them. Doesn't allow you to get that precise, and it just makes your life a lot harder. So we're going to take this off. We're going to get this gauge on there. We're going to set the low pressure regulator, and then this thing's going to be ready to rock. All right, final leg. So now that the marker's completely rebuilt and we have the new tuning gauge turned on, the marker's gassed up right now. The big thing to remember here is that we did reset the high pressure reg to about 200 PSI. This will probably get us in the 270s to, yeah, probably like mid 270s in terms of high pressure reg. Or feet per second, once we have the low pressure reg set to about 80. The important part here is that the low pressure reg is set to 0. And the way that you get there is by just making sure that there's a few threads on the low pressure regulator adjustment screw. So To get this set, we're just going to screw this in, and you could see the pressure is climbing, and we're going to want to just set this to about 80 psi. Now, there's a few different scenarios that can happen when you gas it up. In the case where you do see this gauge kind of jump up to, I don't know, about 200 psi, that's a sign that there's some O-rings that might not be fitting correctly inside of the low pressure regulator. Sometimes some of the older low pressure regs, the pistons themselves take a larger O-ring. It's a 012. So I'm just going to include those in there with the 011s just in case that happens. Otherwise, you shouldn't have too much trouble with that. But yeah, now that pressures are set, I'm going to turn the marker on and turn the eyes off. And then I'm just going to put my handy dandy silencer on here. Oh, maybe the eyes were off before. There we go. We might need to mess with the debounce, but this thing's back in the game.